Hi, I'm Stuart Dryburgh. I'm a cinematographer, most recently on Men in Black International, and you're listening to the Go Creative Show.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Consoli. I am a director and owner of BC Media Productions. And this is the Go Creative Show, the show dedicated to creative professionals in the video production and filmmaking industries. Cinematographer Stuart Dryburgh is on the show today talking about his latest film, Men in Black International. We discuss the film's cinematography, the challenges of shooting in New York City in the snow, his lighting, lens, and camera choices, and tips for shooting action sequences. The Go Creative Show is supported by Rule Boston Camera, Buy Rent Create at Rule.com, Hedge.video, the fastest way to back up media, Shutterstock.com, Magnanimous Rentals, and PremiumBeat.com. Well, this is going to be a fun one today. Stuart Dryburgh, cinematographer, has worked on a whole bunch of stuff. Of course, he's here talking about Men in Black International, but we dive into his entire career. Plus, we talk a lot about shooting action sequences, which is really cool. We haven't spent a lot of time on that on the show, so it's a nice change of events and very interesting discussion, so you guys are going to love it. But before we get there, I want to talk about Rule Boston Camera. We have some news. For the entire month of June, you can rent the Angenieux Optimo Ultra 12x zoom lens for 25% off. Now, that's an absolutely amazing lens. The images are fantastic, and 25% off is a big chunk of change off of that lens. So take advantage over at Rule.com, and also take advantage of their learning labs. These are free events, and on Wednesday, June 19th, right there at Rule Boston Camera, the event is called Wireless Lens Control, Pro Live Streaming, and New Monitors. So you're going to get the team from Creative Solutions. They're going to demo the newest line of Teradek RT wireless lens control products, plus live streaming and a deep dive into Small HD's Cine 7 monitor. So there's a lot going on there. It's a free event. It's from 1 to 3. You can get your tickets over at Rule.com or RSVP at events@Rule.com. It's free. You can learn. You don't have to spend a dime. And that's why we love those guys. All right, it's time to move on to our spotlight. We've got cinematographer Stuart Dryburgh talking about his latest film, Men in Black International. So I'm here with Stuart Dryburgh, the director of photography for a whole bunch of fantastic films. I mean, your portfolio is outrageous, but he's here today to talk about his new film, Men in Black International. Stuart, thanks so much for being on Go Creative Show.
Thank you for having me.
We were just talking about how the pronunciation of your name for real, based on your Scottish ancestors, would be what?
Dryburgh. Well,
Dryburgh.
Dryburgh, yeah. Which is what, exactly.
It sounds like you just give up on it, like halfway through saying it. You're just like, Dryburgh, forget it.
Yeah. Pretty much. And, you know, my mom and dad sort of stuck, even though they were both born in London, they sort of stuck with it, I guess, for the sake of their parents, who were both Scots on both sides. And so that sort of carried on into our life in New Zealand. And when I moved to America, I saw an opportunity to, because there were lots of Goldbergs and Pittsburghs and Greenbergs,
Yeah.
So I went, okay, I'm joining that clan.
It's just easier. When did you move to the U.S.?
1996 was when I moved here to live. But I'd been starting to work here a little bit over the previous 5 years.
Yeah, so you came here already as full-fledged director of photography. That was your career. So you started your career when? Did you start in New Zealand or did you start in the UK?
No, in New Zealand. I didn't move. I moved to New Zealand with my family when I was 9 years old. I did all my secondary education, my university, all of that in New Zealand, and started working in the film industry there in the late 70s. And I started to shoot, to be a director of photography in 1985. So, 10 years really before I moved to the US.
Now, and that was The Piano your first feature film?
Technically, although I'd done a previous project with Jane Campion, which was conceived as a television miniseries, An Angel at My Table, but was presented in a lot of markets as a rather long feature film.
Hmm.
sort of 2.5, 3 hours. But I'd done a couple of long form. I did a ski movie, believe it or not, before that, which was a lot of fun. But
You did a what?
a ski movie, like a ski adventure.
Oh.
Yeah, called The Leading Edge, which I was hired for because I could ski, and I was a young cinematographer and therefore cheap.
Yeah.
And we had an awful lot of fun doing it. But it's not it's not one of the great artistic achievements of the 20th century. But it's fun.
I'd love to be in that meeting. We need somebody cheap and who can ski. It sounds that's like who can we find that fits those two categories?
Right, and I fitted it pretty good. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was good. Look, shooting out in the natural world is a big part of the job, and so that was it was good. And, being at the top of a mountain with just a camera and a pair of skis is pretty fun too.
We I can't remember his name, but we had the cinematographer on that shot Everest. I think it was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And,
the IMAX.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it was the film. It was the feature film. It wasn't like a documentary. It was oh man, what is his name? That's going to kill me. Well, it'll come to me. But we talked a lot about just how difficult it is to shoot outdoors. Like they decided to do a lot of stuff practically, and my God, just the challenge. And I'll complain if I don't have enough. Like if we don't have great coffee on set in a studio, I'll complain. and then you have to shoot outside in the wilderness like that. I mean, what an experience that must have been.
Yes, agreed. And although I'm going to go and say, in my world, the toughest exterior environment would be New York in January at night.
Are we referencing Men in Black International?
No, actually, I mean, my most recent experience of that was a film called Ben is Back.
Oh.
Which we made mostly in New York City and Rockland County in Westchester. And a lot of that work was, in the middle of winter, in the middle of the night, outside. And it's cold.
I mean, despite the obvious that it's cold, what are some of the challenges that maybe you weren't even expecting when shooting outside New York in the middle of January?
Well, the fact that you start a scene with no snow, and then 2 days into it, it snows. And you have to either have people come in with shovels and move all the snow, or do it as a digital effect later. It's so the technical challenges like that, are the weather primarily. And snow is an obvious one because it's so visible. The general rule of thumb in my life has been that you get snow when you don't want it, and you don't get it when you do want it.
I'm glad you brought up Ben is Back. I was just looking at a trailer for it. I hadn't seen the film, but just learning about your career, I'd been looking at some trailers for things that I hadn't seen. And I'm thinking to myself, when I look across all of your films, you have such a varied type of film. Like there's no pigeonholing whatsoever with your career. You've basically done everything that you possibly can in this.
Yeah.
You really are not pigeonholed at all. And when you look through your IMDb, you're like, oh my God, he shot that. He shot that. He shot that. Because I think oftentimes you think you've got the DP that does the stunts and the adventures in the big, huge blockbuster films that wouldn't necessarily touch something like Ben is Back. With its subject matter, and it's relatively small in comparison to something like Men in Black or Great Wall. Is that something that you strive for? Are you constantly looking to challenge yourself?
I don't know if I'm looking to challenge myself, but I'm definitely not wanting to get into a pigeonhole. I did have a period in my career that followed my work with Jane Campion, where a lot of women directors were drawn to me, and that in itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a great thing. I love working with women as much as men. But sometimes that led more towards what I might call softer material, more romantic comedies. Although to be honest, the big romantic comedies I did were with people like Gary Marshall and James Mangold. And I kind of really worked hard to get out of that. One of the people who helped me get out of that actually was a woman, Karen Kusama, who had me shoot Aeon Flux, which was a science fiction, somewhat feminist science fiction adventure movie.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'm not so much consciously looking for challenges, but I guess I'm easily bored, so that I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. And I'm looking for the next thing to be something I haven't done before.
Do you see that a lot with peers or just other people in the industry where they do get kind of, I hate to say the word stuck, because I mean, you're certainly not stuck if you're making feature films.
No.
That's a dream job. But just the fact that you're like in a place where you feel like you're being pigeonholed, is it hard to get out of that? And do you see that a lot?
I definitely struggled a little bit to get away from the romantic comedies, because on one level, they're great. I wouldn't say they're easy, but they're straightforward. It's basically make it look great, make sure the girl looks pretty, and that everyone feels good about the movie. I definitely sort of, and of course they're, for the big studio movies, it's well paid as well.
Yeah.
So but it definitely took me a few years to break away from that, and now, almost nobody ever calls me for a romantic comedy, and I'm sort of happy for that.
Yeah.
And I really gravitate towards the more, what I would call the more, I was going to say the more masculine material, but that sounds wrong. I guess the more adult and that sounds wrong too, doesn't it?
I think it's not even masculine versus feminine or adult versus childish. It's like one of them is just incorporating more stunts and fight sequences
action,
and all that.
yeah.
It's just you're kind of. I mean, Aeon Flux is an action film. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Oh no, Aeon Flux is I'm very, very partial with that. I guess the movies I have a shortage of in my resume, which I would like to see more of, would be films like Black Hat. Yeah. Which was cybercrime thriller for Michael Mann. Very tough, very edgy. That's actually more my taste in movies that I would watch. More the taste in books I would read. So in a way, I'm drawn more to that, and the science fiction, of course, which I do enjoy.
Yeah. I want to just take a quick second and talk about your degree in architecture. But it's kind of an odd place to start for this interview. But I'm fascinated by that because I'm wondering if I think there's something really interesting about architecture where it forces you to look at things differently. Like you don't just look at a building. Most people just walk down the street, they don't think about anything. They're just going to their destination. It is what it is. You have headphones on, you're not paying attention. I think when people study architecture, they're really focusing on details that are often overlooked. And I'm wondering if that's something that has informed the way that you shoot.
I think it does. Certainly the school I went to in Auckland, New Zealand, there was a lot of emphasis on theory and spatial theory, thinking in three dimensions, which of course, even though motion pictures is typically a two-dimensional, I know we have 3D, but it's still kind of a two-dimensional form.
Yeah.
The actual camera and the actors are moving and performing in a three-dimensional space. So I think that aspect was great. I think it was a great visual arts, fairly general visual arts education, which is incredibly useful to somebody in this line of work. And the process of designing a building is not dissimilar from the process of preparing and creating a movie.
How so?
Well, typical design process starts with a brief. In other words, we're going to make this kind of building, or we have a script for this kind of movie. And then there's sort of a brainstorming session that goes on where all ideas are possible. And then you basically edit those ideas down. And now we have the plan of the building, the shooting schedule, and the working shooting script for the movie in parallel. And then executing the movie is very much like building a house. You start at the foundation, you work your way up, you put the walls up. The difference being in a movie, we don't necessarily start at the bottom and end with the roof, but we definitely have that blueprint to work to. So there's some definite parallels. Whether I might be stretching the analogy a little bit, but I've always found it very similar.
And a lot of that, when I'm hearing you talk, it sounds a lot like production design too. And actually, our last interview was with Gemma Jackson, who did the production design for. Well, she was on the show for Aladdin, but I know she worked with you for Bridget Jones, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And she's an old and dear friend of mine. She also did season 2 and 3 of Game of Thrones, I think, which unbelievably beautiful work. And a ton of great work. Early work with Neil Jordan. I'm a great admirer of Gemma's.
She's excellent.
And as I say, she's also a dear friend. And a dear friend.
Yeah, and so I'm curious how you work with the production designers. How involved are you in designing these films?
I'm not so much involved in designing these films. I'm not in the design. The design is very much the designer's territory. However, almost the first thing that happens when I start on a film, bear in mind the production designer may have been on the film, a big film, for 3, even 4 months before I'm hired. Almost the first thing that happens is I come into the office the first day, I have the meet and greet, welcome to the movie with the director, a quick chat, and then I'm dragged up into the design department by the designers. I need you to tell me what you think of this and this and this and this and this. Will this work? Is this building too small? Is this room too large? Is this white too white? They have a huge number of questions of me, because the honest truth is I say the director of photography can help the design of the movie look great, and you can also mess it up. You can mess with the color palette, So it's really important that the designer and the DP are on the same wavelength, and they know that really, really well, because they've seen some of their best work not treated properly, and so it's really really important to the designer that he and I are on the same wavelength.
Let's tie this discussion into Men in Black International, because you're getting involved with a film now. Is that I think that's the 4th one, right? Men in Black, because there was 1 and 2 and 3, and then International. Okay, so you're getting involved in a franchise that has been developed over 20 years now?
Yeah, easily.
And just thinking in terms of production design and bringing your own spin on it. When you come into a project like this, how much freedom do you have to create something new in the 4th installment of a franchise?
Yeah, okay. I mean, there's certain givens that you have to respect in the franchise, in this franchise in particular, but any franchise, that there are certain basic stylistic rules that you're going to maintain, and for us, it was the black and white of the clothing needs to be. Otherwise they're always men in black. They always have a sparkling white shirt.
Yeah,
that's one thing. There was a sort of a simplicity to the framing, a centering on the characters that allows for a lot of the humor to play, when you were looking at the older movies with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, and then we, working with F. Gary Gray, the director, who of course wanted to bring his own stamp to it, while respecting the franchise, we started to see how could we push the franchise forward a little bit. And this one, I think, has probably more action, or more sort of big action, than the earlier movies. It also moves into a bigger stage, as it says, international. The action very quickly moves from New York to London, from London to Morocco to Italy, to Paris. It was, and of course, it also has new characters. There's I think Emma Thompson's the only carryover from the previous movies.
Yeah,
She plays the overall head of MIB, the boss.
Yeah.
So there's there's quite long-winded way of saying is that you respect the basic rules of the franchise. At the same time, you want to lead the audience into a newer and a new experience within that context.
We can't talk too much about the film just because it hasn't come out yet, but what can people expect from this that may be a little bit different than the previous three?
Well, the first thing is no Tommy Lee Jones and no Will Smith. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones was barely in the last one anyway, but he's still quite a presence in the first, a very, very important presence in the first three, as is Will. And so the two lead characters now are Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, who have, of course, already established an on-screen relationship in the Avengers movies.
Yeah,
which in itself is interesting. And in a sense, she is the neophyte, the way that Will Smith was in the first movie. And Chris plays the sort of older, jaded, suave, British version of Tommy Lee Jones, in a sense.
Yeah.
So there's a new relationship. There's new characters to meet. As I said, I think the big difference is that we've expanded the stage from being. Pretty much all the other movies were in New York or around New York, with a bit of Texas, bit of Florida, whatever here and there. But this one really moves into the international thriller world in a way.
And that's got to be fun for you. I mean, how much of this was shot, if you had to put a percentage on it, how much was shot on stage versus in actual locations around the world?
Probably I would say about 50 to 60% on stage in London, but we also had location work in London because a lot of the story takes place in London. So we have a big action sequence that takes place in front of St. Paul's Cathedral at night, which is really a lot of fun. And other London-based locations. Then we moved for 3 or 4 weeks to Marrakesh and the desert in Morocco.
Wow.
And then we have some days in Italy as well. So, it's probably about 50-50 stage and location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your experience like shooting in Morocco? Had you done it before?
I shot a pilot for NBC Universal called American Odyssey a few years ago, which shot Boston and Morocco, and so I wasn't entirely unfamiliar with Morocco, but I hadn't been to Marrakesh before, which is where the majority of our action takes place. And that's a great city, a fun city to shoot in, crazy city, but fun.
Hedge.video is where you go for the best of the best in backup software. It's the best of the best. Now, Hedge is a backup software for filmmakers. We talk about it all the time. It's super fast. It's super easy and intuitive. You can import multiple sources and send it to multiple destinations all at the same time. If you get the Hedge Connect app for your phone, you'll know when the transfer is done because you just get a little update on your phone. It's so convenient, and they're constantly updating the app. So when you get a license from Hedge, you are going to get the latest and greatest at all times. And that's one of the many reasons why we love those guys. But they also have this really fantastic integration with Frame.io. So if you have Frame.io installed on your desktop, what's going to happen is Hedge is going to identify that you have Frame.io installed, and it's going to offer up your watch folders as a destination. So this is what can happen. You import your sources. You can set your destinations to your hard drives or your desktop or wherever you put your media, but you can also set it to your watch folder. So that means it automatically gets uploaded to the watch folder, and whoever is on the other side waiting for that footage can get to it immediately. So think of how great that's going to be when you need to get dailies up to your editor right away. It's a huge deal. So Frame.io integration hedge.video. You need to check out this app. You can get 20% off by simply going to hedge.video/Go Creative Show. So why not give it a shot? Hedge.video/Go Creative Show. And lastly, let's talk about Magnanimous Rentals. Magnanimous Rentals is a rental house based in Chicago. They ship anywhere in the country, so you can take advantage of what I am about to say. They've got a fantastic inventory. Like, that is a given. You go to their site, you can't believe the stuff that they have there. But the big thing with Magnanimous Rentals is the prices. You cannot, it's impossible to beat their prices. They're so obsessed with price, they've got 3 of them. They've got their regular price, which is in black. You're also going to find blue prices, which is in blue text. Those are the dynamic prices, and those are auto-lowered every day below regular price. They change daily, so you have to go to their site all the time to see what's available. And then they have the flash discounts in red. Now, here's the thing. Flash discounts are the most discounted items on the site. They are deeply discounted, sometimes 50% off. Right now, I'm looking at an Arri S60 LED sky panel kit. Sky panels. Those lights are amazing. And they offer a flash discount right now. It's $540 for a week. 7 days. Less than $100 a day. It's insanity. But here's the thing with the flash discounts is you have to put your order in while the flash discount is happening, and it's only a limited time. So here's my advice. Go to magrents.com every day you have to do it, and see what they have to offer. You're going to be amazed. There's always going to be something going on. Even if it's their regular price, it's still going to be amazing. But those flash discounts, when those are on the site, take advantage because they are amazing prices on even more amazing equipment. And it's all there at magrents.com. I want to talk about your lighting techniques for Men in Black International. It has a lot of bright white. You had mentioned just a moment ago, you have to make sure those blacks are right. You got to make sure those whites are really bright and sparkling. And a lot of the sets, like the command center, has such bright, full white walls. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit about sort of how you dealt with that.
Yes.
I mean, is that a challenge?
I am not somebody who is afraid of white. Yeah. I welcome bright whites, and again, this is one of the conversations I had early on with Charles Woods, the production designer, when he was putting together the big London office, which is essentially an Art Deco, a huge Art Deco hall, beautiful, with these white, black columns and white walls and light-colored floor, very, very, very much in the Art Deco style, and they're whites, not creams. We just said we would go with them, we work on them, and certainly, there is certainly some work in post-production that we did to clean up where perhaps there was a warmer or colder light source that made the whites a little off. I hadn't really thought it through to that extent. I was happy with that, but the producers definitely wanted to make sure that we kept, wherever possible, the suits and the shirts black and white. So sometimes we would have to go in and post. There's a scene that takes place outside the Eiffel Tower, which is sort of bathed in golden light because that's the color of the Eiffel Tower at night. But we corrected, in post, we corrected the blacks and whites of the clothing and the skin tones to make them more normal, for want of a better term.
Yeah. To me, I'm thinking to myself, the blend of, you have something that's so sci-fi looking. You have these ultra white environments, there's aliens all over the place, but then you pair it with something when you're shooting in Morocco, and it's dusty and it's brown and but you still have to keep that crispness in the characters. Yes. They have to stay clean. How do they stay clean? I mean, that even just something as simple as that.
I think sometimes they didn't. I think that I think you'll find there's some scenes where people pick themselves up out of the dust and have to brush off their suits, figuratively, if not literally. And one of the things that helped us create a very clean, crisp look for this movie was that our main shooting platform was the Alexa 65, which is the Arri's big format camera.
Yeah,
it has a sensor, I think, over 7K. Okay. Yes. 2K, 3, 4, 5. Yes. 7K. And although we weren't finished, we were actually essentially using it as a 4K camera. By scaling the image afterwards, it captures so much detail and does that without introducing any video artifacts, because it's such a highly detailed image to begin with, that you get a really clean, really crisp look without compromising the softness of people's faces and detail like that. I'm a great fan of that camera.
I have no experience with the 65, but plenty of experience with the minis and the Amiras. And when you up-res those to 4K, they look amazing. I don't know. I mean, whatever's going on inside that camera is pretty incredible, because that up-res quality is just so great.
I mean, I am primarily a fan of the Arriflex Alexa system for digital. I know I'm going to have a close look at the new Sony camera, the Venice.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at that. People speak very highly of the look of that camera.
Yeah.
But what I've found about, and this is an uninformed opinion, but
uninformed. You just used it.
no. I mean, I'm going to talk about technical stuff that is a little bit beyond my ken. Is that the engineers at Arriflex are primarily camera engineers. They developed the Arri Cam. They developed the BL series. Whether they personally, but certainly the culture of that department. And so when they set out to build a digital camera, well, actually, their first attempt at the digital camera, the D series, was a bit of a flop, because they were so keen to keep it true to being a film style camera that it didn't have the sensitivity and the speed that people needed. It was basically a 100 ASA camera, and that was really not very helpful.
No, I haven't even heard of it. What was the name of it again? The
D. It was called the Arri Cam D or Arriflex D, and the D2, which was this. If you look at Google it, you'll find it. But so they needed when they sort of started facing competition from the Red camera in particular, which became so popular in the early days of digital, and some of the Sony products, was sort of, and essentially was killing their, they'd all created this beautiful film camera, the Arri Cam, which essentially was now just sitting on the shelves at rental companies because everyone was shooting digital. So they went back to the drawing board, and they actually drew on the technology of the Arri scanning system that was used to scan film to digital. And as I understand it, that was where the sort of software side of the camera came from. And I don't know, but because they're primarily camera engineers, they were looking at the image from a photographic point of view. They weren't, I always say that, like a lot of modern digital camera engineers will say, look, it's fantastic. You can see into the blacks forever. I don't want to see into the blacks forever. I want the blacks to go black,
Yeah.
It's the highlight detail I'm usually more interested in. And the Arris are great. They really don't clip into the whites. They render good shadow detail, but at a certain point, the shadows become black, as they do in life.
Yeah.
And I think that, I just think they had a more, should we say, more photographer's eye when they were developing that camera. And this certainly works for me.
Yeah, I'm looking on their Wikipedia right now, and I'm seeing this, the Arriflex D20.
D20, not D2, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it was introduced in 2005 and then discontinued in 2008 and replaced with a D21, which I haven't heard of either. I think, too, Red came in, everybody was excited about digital. They certainly got a great market share, but I still feel like, To me, it seems like the Alexas are still kind of the gold standard for the cinematic look.
I think so.
Yeah.
And the 65 has definitely created a niche for itself in the bigger movies. And they also brought out what I laughingly call the Netflix camera, because as you may know, Netflix have required all their material to be sourced at 4K minimum over the last few years. And the Arriflex, even at open gate, the Alexa at open gate was 3.4, I think, K, which great looking picture, but could be, and as you say, could be scaled to 4K, but did not meet their specs. So they now have a camera called the LF, large format. And they've just introduced a mini version of that as well.
Yeah, at NAB.
Yeah, which I think essentially, I'm not sure what, this again is a camera I haven't shot with yet, but it's very much answering that sort of middle, that 4K TV range, and it sits somewhere between the Alexa, the basic Alexa family, and the 65, and I know that Kramer Morgenthau is shooting the Sopranos prequel movie using that at the moment, and
using the LF.
The LF, yeah, and they're getting great results with that.
Is this your first film with the 65?
No, I did Great Wall.
Okay.
And Great Wall was actually the very first feature film to use the 65.
Oh, wow.
I was in the year before that, I was doing Alice Through the Looking Glass, which again was heavy effects based movie. And our effects supervisor was asking for a 4K minimum capture. And on hearing that, the guys at Arri sort of took me into a back room, swore me to secrecy, and threatened me with all sorts of horrors if I revealed anything. And then took me to Munich and showed me the prototype that they were building of the 65. And they said, look, maybe we'll have this ready in time for the production on Alice. In fact, they didn't.
Yeah.
But we shot some tests for them. And I stayed very involved with the development team of that camera. And when at the end of Alice, I was hired by Jean Yimou to shoot Great Wall, I immediately suggested that we take that camera, given the scope of the movie, and just seemed to cry out for a big format.
Just to take another moment on the 65, so you're getting involved in Men in Black International.
Yes.
Shooting the Alexa 65, your second film with it.
Yes.
Was there something about this film that was uniquely tailored for the 65? Like, did you look at this film and say that's going to be the perfect camera? And if so, I'm just curious why.
It's definitely helpful to have that high pixel count for the effects work, even though they quite often scale it down.
Yeah.
Just for file handling. That you've got source material that is really rich in detail. Which is helpful in post. The other part of it is I like because it is a medium format camera, it has the same sort of depth of field qualities as shooting a 35mm camera anamorphic, but without the anamorphic flares and distortions. And, we can all discuss when we want those and when we don't.
Yeah.
But again, given the effects work, it was thought preferable to stay spherical. But having that shorter depth of field, I like, because it allows you to sort of isolate the characters in space and in the plane of focus. The third factor is that I think that the hidden benefit of the 65 system is, besides it has a lot of detail and it can capture brilliant landscapes and, casts of thousands and all of that kind of thing, it's really, really nice on the human face. And this is because, and again, the really techie people are going to giggle, but as I understand it, there is, in the typical digital camera, process called aliasing, where essentially artificially sharpen the edges of things. In the old analog cameras, it was called peaking. And you would often put it in when you wanted to see how accurately you were focusing.
Yeah.
You could dial in the peaking into your viewfinder. But the aliasing is inherent in the CCU of the camera. And I've certainly found in my early experiences with digital, even with the Alexa system, flaws and lines on people's faces that I really couldn't see with my eye. That I'd look at the monitor and go, how the heck? What? And you start introducing diffusion filters and, glares and such like to try and compensate for that. Because the 65 has such a big sensor and such a huge data flow from the sensor to the CCU, you don't need to do that. And so that it has no compression and, as far as I can tell, no aliasing applied to it. And this makes it a very very kind on people's faces. You get a beautiful roll-off of skin tones, very realistic depiction of the human face. So it's a great landscape camera and a great portrait camera all at once.
I want to talk a couple of minutes on your lens choices for Men in Black International.
Sure.
Because you had mentioned earlier that you sort of had to stay true to one of the, cinematic benchmarks of the film, of these kind of big centered wides.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about your lens choices.
So we actually went, the one step we made away from sort of perfection in the image was to use a set of lenses that Arri Alexa have developed, which are called the DNAs. And DNA stands apparently for do not ask, meaning you are not allowed to ask what this lens started life as. And they found a whole bunch of medium format lenses of all shapes and sizes and rehoused them into a set. And they are slightly imperfect. They might have a slight focus fall off towards the edge. They might have a sense that they flare a bit more or a slightly different color. And because we wanted to get some of that sort of a little character into the show as well, without introducing filtration as such. So we used, and again, because they're medium format lenses, a wide lens, very wide lens would be a 24. 28 is pretty darn wide. 35 is still really wide. I mean, really wide, comparable to a 14, 16, 18 in 35 mil, or standard chip digital. So, and we definitely tended to play towards the wide end. I would think of the 45 is probably the most common camera lens in the box that we used, and we certainly weren't afraid of getting close to people with wide lenses to create a sort of a particularity to the look on people. And again, the big wides, we have like the entire desert in Morocco at one point in one shot.
I'm looking at the DNA lenses right now. I haven't heard of them, but I'm looking at some test shots, and it looks really cool. There's a lot of character in there. It's interesting.
Exactly. And the thing I noticed on Great Wall, where I used the new and beautiful Alexa Arri 65, I think they're called, lenses, and their older 765 movie lenses that they developed for their 70mm film system back in the 80s, that they were really, really nice. But I just wanted something with a little bit more character, a little bit more of a point of view for Men in Black. And when I pitched that to Gary, he was on board with that. And so we went, after a lot of testing, we looked at a lot of different lenses before we settled on that. But these were always the main contenders, and they did win out in the end.
You are listening to the PremiumBeat.com Song of the Week. It's called Swimming in the Pool by Christian Vass. PremiumBeat.com is where to go for all of your royalty-free music and sound effects. Go to their website, and you are faced with a collection of thousands of royalty-free tracks for as low as $49 each. And it's not just the individual track. No. You get cut downs, you get loop sets, you get stems, everything you need to customize the music to your project perfectly. But let's face it, it's all about quality, and that's what you're going to get. So head over to premiumbeat.com, check this song out, and look around to find something else for your projects. You're going to love it. premiumbeat.com. And lastly, Shutterstock.com. We talk about Shutterstock all the time, but we're always talking about their great footage and music and photos and all that. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about their blog. Their blog. You probably go to the site all the time and don't even think to click on that blog. But I'm telling you, it is worth your time. They've got really great stories here. I mean, I'm looking at their site right now. They got a whole bunch of posts in a whole bunch of different categories. They're covering editing, design, business, video production, of course, news, a couple of stories that are just popping up here on the homepage. Diverse beauty image to inspire your next photo shoot. So there's one for inspiration. Videographer's exposure reference guide. That's always super handy. New content that they love in June. So they curate different clips and photos for the month. And just something simple like tips on photographing waves from land and in water. Like, you don't think about that, but if you're shooting on the beach, it's summertime, you need to have those waves look good. And it's challenging because it can very easily overexpose. So there's a lot of little design tips here and inspiration and business tips. There's a lot in there. So I really encourage you. I'm not even going to try to talk to you for a second about their footage and their music and their images. I'm going to talk to you about their blog. Head over there, Shutterstock.com, click on blog, and see what's there. I guarantee you're going to be inspired by something. I want to take a minute and talk about your relationship with the colorist through this film. Like, were you creating custom LUTs? How were you working with your DIT? Just what was that workflow like?
Yeah, exactly. As we started developing a look for the picture, and this happened quite early in pre-production, shooting some early camera tests, going out onto some of the locations and shooting. We worked with our DIT, Peter Welsh, who's a very accomplished British technician and filmmaker, to develop. And we did this in concert with Technicolor in London, who were doing our dailies. So we shot some tests, and then Peter and myself went into the lab and worked with their colorist to find some basic looks for the movie. What's the basic night look? What's the basic day look? What's the look of the big London headquarters? And then we were able to output those as camera LUTs, although I think I would have to ask Peter this. I'm pretty sure he kept them as text files, as CDLs. But nevertheless, we have some certain go-to looks that becomes our base palette for the film. And then on location, once we were shooting, Peter and I might look at an image and go, and it could be me or it could be him, suggesting more contrast, less contrast, more yellow, more blue, And so that then became the CDL base for dailies. And that all well and good. That information then is essentially filed away until we get to the process that I was involved in 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, doing the final color in the digital DI suite, digital intermediate.
Yeah.
And there's Steve Nakamura from Company 3, who is our colorist in LA, was able to sort of start. His starting point was those files from dailies, and then we worked from there, sort of pulling, because obviously dailies, you don't know how the film is going to cut together when you're creating dailies, and there's a whole bunch of different stuff that you want to adjust in post, plus a vast amount of visual effect shots to be integrated. So yeah, it's if there's one thing that has changed hugely in the transition from film to digital, it's that work, that your ability to manipulate the image now is huge.
Yeah, and I think there's two schools of thoughts. I mean, some DPs come on the show and they'll say, I want everything to look exactly the way it's going to be at the end of the process while we're shooting. And others are sort of like, no, we create a lot, we just kind of throw it on there, but we know we're going to make final tweaks later. So you can do it either way. What is it more for you? Did you like to see it on set?
I mean, I'm in the middle. I'm definitely striving on set to deliver what I think is going to be the final look of the picture.
Yeah.
But I also know that it isn't, or it may not be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That once I get into the DI suite, as I said, the thing we mentioned earlier, that we have scenes that might have a particular color cast across them, which I really like. But it wasn't until I got into the DI suite at the end, and Walter Parks, one of the producers, came in and goes, "Oh, but the shirts aren't white." And I'm going, "No, that's because the light is yellow." He said, "Well, we're going to have to fix that." I'm going, "Okay, all right, we'll fix that." You know what I mean? Like it's that thing, because that's a keynote of the franchise. So I try to anticipate as much as possible, try and create the look in camera and in the CDLs, primarily in camera. I try to do as little CDL tweaking on set as I can, because it's time consuming.
Yeah.
And it can lead you a bit down a rabbit hole sometimes. But start with what you think's right, but be prepared to modify it later is sort of the way I work.
In our last couple of minutes, I want to just talk about the way you approach action sequences, because, you did Great Wall, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Eon Flux. I mean, Men in Black. There's a lot of action sequences in your experiences, and we don't get a lot of opportunity to talk to people about how they sort of put those together. And I know it's a large discussion. We only have a few minutes left, but I'd love to just get your insights on how you plan for those.
Well, often the first planning is done by the stunt coordinator. So, say a fight, for example.
Sure.
There'll be, or a fall, or any of those sort of major action-y things, that the stunt coordinator will develop a piece of action and then essentially show us, meaning the director and myself and the assistant director, the rehearsal, either in reality or on video. And then he'll get notes from the director. But at that point, what's really useful is that I'm often going around either with a stills camera or a video camera, getting angles that I think work. And again, I'll talk to him, because I'll show him an angle and say, "Oh yeah, that's a great shot, but that hit is open. You can see that there's no connection." You know what I mean? Those sort of classic things that happen in a fight, or that in that fall, that shot won't work because you'll see the pads, and we don't want to do removal in post. So it becomes very collaborative. And then on set, I like to, having done all that planning, I like to keep it very organic. I'm a great believer in shooting action sequences handheld as much as possible. And with handheld shooting, I'll often take the camera myself, because I can make instantaneous decisions that an operator who's working for me may not feel empowered to do.
Yeah.
Literally hand and eye decisions. And I find them incredibly stimulating. I mean, they're really fun.
Oh, that must be a blast. Just how, and I'm kind of surprised to hear you say it. I was thinking that the action sequences, they're fun, but they have to be so choreographed that they almost lose that organicness to it, because it's so planned and every shot is perfect and in the exact spot. So it's really interesting to hear that it's almost the opposite for you. Not that it's not planned.
Well, It's both.
Yeah.
It's saying you make a really good plan, and you know basically where the angles are. But then by keeping the operating organic, you can react. Because again, it's action. It's not always going to be, somebody doesn't necessarily fall or dive in exactly the same way. You want to be able to react to that.
Yeah.
There's a lovely fight in the introductory scene for Chris Hemsworth in Men in Black, which I'm very fond of, and it has all those elements to it. Great planning and organic execution.
So you're in there handheld. I'm assuming that you are almost responding to things going on the way you would if you were just a person there. Like, something sparks your attention, you turn toward it,
Actually, think of it as if you were a documentary or news photographer.
Ah, yeah.
It's that you are reacting the way that you would in a real world situation where you don't really know what's going to happen.
Do you have multiple cameras set up to grab those shots that you're just, two things are happening at once, three things are happening at once, and you just can't do it all?
Sometimes, usually yes, but I think often in the closer coverage of these action sequences, there's really no room for more than one camera.
Sure.
Sometimes there is, and sometimes you can get a second camera on a long lens that's grabbing stuff. Sometimes I'll put up two handheld cameras. Myself and the AI operator will both take a camera and cross shoot a piece of action if we can keep out of each other's way. But we're applying the same principle to it.
What is it in the cinematography that gives the action sequence that edge? I mean, is it just purely the handheld, or are you doing other things that kind of make it feel?
Well, lighting, of course. I mean, lighting's always fundamental.
Yeah.
Lighting can be used both for sort of visual and dramatic effect, but also, you can hide and reveal things. You can hide the things that you don't want to show and make and emphasize the things you do. So that's a crucial part of it. But yeah, it's really all the elements of cinematography being brought to bear in the service of the story, which is obviously what you're doing all the time. But I think in an action sequence, it's even more succinct.
Lighting was the first thing you mentioned immediately, and I'd love to dig in just a touch more into that.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that you would light an action scene that people may not think of right away? Do you do something different to an action scene that you wouldn't normally?
No. It's really like any dramatic scene. You try and find the lighting that's right for that scene. But because by nature action scenes are more dramatic, sometimes you make the lighting more dramatic. Maybe, but again, there's no one rule. I mean, every scene has its own requirement.
Well, I'm super excited for this film. You were just there 2 weeks ago, you're saying, doing the color work. Are you happy with what you're seeing?
I'm delighted. I think it's going to be a really great little picture, and great big picture, actually.
Exactly. This is certainly not a little picture.
Certainly would prefer it to be a big picture. No, I think people are going to really dig it. But that's the thing you don't know. The trick with this movie is because it's a reboot and it's new characters, whether people are going to embrace that. If they can, I think they're going to love it. That's the only unknown, is because there are the new characters. Are people going to say, "Oh, but I miss Will and Tommy"? Well, those guys don't want to do it anymore. I think it's probably the fair answer. So if you want Men in Black, it's new people, and I think Chris and Tessa are epic. And the whole movie is so much fun.
It looks so much fun. The trailers are awesome. I mean.
Yeah.
And I'm not even like a huge Men in Black fan, but I see these trailers. I'm like, this is awesome. We've got to get the guy on the show to talk about how he put this thing together. And we're certainly happy that you came on the show to talk about it.
Well, I'm delighted to talk to you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ben.
What's next for you?
Actually, I'm taking a bit of a break from feature work. I'm doing a bunch of TV commercials. I've met a whole bunch of new friends, and I'm working mostly in New York City and Europe, doing some interesting commercial projects. And
wow.
Yeah, I have a young family, and I'm trying to spend a bit more time at home or minimize the time away. And I'm sure sooner or later something's going to tempt me away and back into the feature world. But right now I'm having a little bit of a breather from it.
Well, we didn't even get to talk about commercials, so that'll be something that we have on next time you come on the show. But I mean, your work on your site is awesome. The Zara commercial, the weather station Volkswagen commercial, I loved it. Capital One. I mean, I love these commercials. I'm a big. I mean, this is what my production company does commercials. So I'm always paying attention to people's commercial work. You really do some fantastic stuff. So everybody's got to go check out his website, stuartdryburgh.com, and I'll put the link in the show notes so you guys can check out his work. Stuart, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben.
There we go, Stuart Dryburgh. Excellent conversation. I love when these guys come on and they're just so honest about what they do and how they do it. It's what it's all about. It's about learning. It's about sharing information. That's why I love doing this show, and thank you guys so much for listening. I also want to thank Matt Russell because he missed... How about that? He mixes, masters, and makes this show sound so good. Now, he would normally cut that out, but I'm not going to let him because I like those little problems, those little issues. Their personality. You can find him over at gainstructure.com and on Twitter at gainstructure. And while you're on Twitter, doing it again, see, I got my tooth drilled this morning, so my face is filled with Novocaine. I can't move my lips, people. So head over there at Gain Structure on Twitter and Go Creative Show at Go Creative Show. Of course, I want to thank our sponsors, Hedge.video, Rule Boston Camera, Magnanimous Rentals, Shutterstock, and Premium Beat. Support those that support us.